The trade deadline's a couple weeks away.
Mm-hmm.
Are you of the opinion that this team has to, in order to salvage this season, or maybe perhaps even for this era, they have to make a move and perhaps even consider making something major? What is up, everybody, and welcome to a crossover edition of the All-NBA Show, where we take a deep dive on a specific team and we bring in somebody that knows their team better than anybody else. And so this week we're talking the New York Knicks. That means we brought in Jonathan Macri, a Knicks film school, who has been suffering for the last several weeks. And yet, last night, it was euphoria around fans out there in the Big Apple. Jonathan, I get the sense that last night's blowout win, 50-point win over the crosstown rival Brooklyn Nets, was like a shot in the arm, a weird shot in the arm, which I would not have guessed, given that they had lost 9 of 11 games. But there seems to be some optimism coming out of you from last night.
Some, and I'm trying to be measured. I mean, look, you beat a team by 54 points. It is admittedly hard to be measured about that. Here's how I put it. I think if they came after, and for anybody who maybe doesn't know, they did not show up in any way, shape, or form against the Mavs on MLK Day, which was a continuation of a trend we've been seeing for the previous few weeks. So if they had showed up against the Nets, who is the closest thing they have to a rival probably at this point, other than maybe Indiana, and it was, a tepid effort, or it was close game for most of it, and then you pull away in the fourth quarter, I think that would have told us that, all right, whatever the issues are that have been going on in the locker room, they may be past the point of no return.
Right.
For them to come out and do what they did last night, at least we know that the thing is not beyond, salvation, or there's still maybe some stuff to deal with in the locker room. And as I know we'll get into on the court in terms of some structural things with the team. Yeah, and no one's pretending a big win over the Nets is going to put those away. But at least now it's like a step in the right direction. They need to determine where they're going to go from here.
I think what you're referencing here is that the team didn't have any spirit or fight or will. And so you worry, like, have they lost faith or have they quit? One of those two things. And when a team to win by 50, you have to have spirit, you have to have effort, you have to have energy. So them showing that is at least showing that there's something in there that still can be, there's some spark that can be kindled and brought back to life. And I understand that take, but I will say that it is, that win is as bad or as good as the losses to the Mavs on an even more high-profile night, MLK Day game. So let's get into the real problems here.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to start with, what do you think happened to this team? Because 3 weeks ago, they were kind of on an upswing. Like right before the fall, it felt like there was a little bit of momentum. So what happened that the wheels came off so dramatically and so thoroughly?
I think you have to honestly go back to last year and from when this team was put together over the summer. And I'm actually going to take it a step further, because a lot of people put the summer of 24 as the inflection point when they went out and got Mikal Bridges, and they obviously went out and got Karl-Anthony Towns. I think you could almost group the OG Anunoby acquisition in with those two, because they really brought in three, not just high-profile guys, but three, significant personalities in different ways, but significant nonetheless. And, you have obviously a team led by Jalen Brunson, but then you are also, their top four is not only the highest paid top four, I believe, in the league, unless I'm forgetting. So maybe Cleveland is the only one that's close there, and we know salaries come with expectations. And all four of those guys, I think, want to believe that they are important enough to play a certain way, to perhaps be accommodated in a certain way. And for the last 3.5 months of last year, a lot of Knicks fans were blaming the issues with the starting lineup on, centers are now guarding Josh Hart and there's not the spacing and the whole thing. I always saw it as being a little bit different than that. I always saw it as a group of players who was not getting along on the court as you would hope, especially considering how well their basketball skills and abilities should theoretically mesh. And I know this is a long-winded way of saying, I think a lot of those issues just never went away. And winning cures all, and you were seeing the team score a bazillion points over the course of the year. And then they suffered this loss on New Year's Eve to San Antonio, in which their own coach said after the game, that was a gut check, and implying that we failed it. And I think that kind of set the snowball rolling down the hill. So I don't think any of this is necessarily new, but I do think it reached a level that it never reached last year. And to that, I think we could get into some other stuff that I don't know if we want to get into yet, but I think there's some reasons for that.
Well, I'm kind of surprised by this. And again, when you're close to the team, you see these dynamics because, yes, they have been winning a lot. And there's just the backstory of they knew each other. This was when you say there's guys that we're not quite playing the way that, we're not using my talents enough or whatever.
Yeah.
I understand that for guys that maybe really clash. But when you have a history, I get it. So it goes to the core question for me, which is, there's one guy that doesn't have a great backstory with him, or one primary guy, or main guy, which is Karl Anthony Towns. Yeah. So is this primarily a Karl Anthony Towns is sacrificing to fit into a group of buddies that kind of like to play this way? Or is it go beyond that, OG Anunoby and others as well?
So I think with Karl, and I did a podcast for Knicks Film School yesterday with someone who's been covering the Wolves for a very long time, and made the point that, like, look, it wasn't always great in Minnesota, but when you reached Cat and when he was at his best, you accommodated him in certain ways, which is you got him touches in some of the places he liked to get touches, and you made him feel valued. You made him feel, even after Ant came in, Cat still had his share of the offense. I think Tibbs did a nice job of that last year overall. I think you could argue that Towns had the best offensive season of his career under Thibodeau last year. This season, Mike Brown came in wanting him to play a little bit more like the last center Mike Brown coached, Domantas Sabonis. And I'm not breaking any news here. All of the Knick beat reporters have said versions of this. That didn't go over so well with Cat. And I think and this is, I don't know if cerebral player is the right description, but he has shown himself over his career to sometimes be a little emotional and be, sure, with the ebbs and flows. So if he's not feeling the right kind of way, and if he's not feeling valued and appreciated in the way that he needs to, I think that, as much as, anything else, is the reason why you're seeing him have the least efficient season of his career. So I know I didn't give you like a direct answer there. I think a lot of it is Cat, though, but I don't think he's the only issue, to be very clear.
Well, to be honest with you, though, I think that this is like easy to criticize, but it's a human thing. When you feel put in a box, it's kind of telling you you're not needed as much as you think you are. And so then in the diminished role, it's harder to be efficient at. He has the fewest touches of his career this year. And the pick and roll, the two-man actions, I should say, any type of two-man action using Brunson and Cat, it's just been declining. It's like a 2-year arc where it starts here and every month it seems to drop a little bit more. And to me, I understand the idea of maybe Cat isn't as important or as good as he thinks he is, or maybe it shouldn't be tailored to him completely. Everybody has to sacrifice. But if you over-index on that, he is the type of guy that says, yeah, but if you're going to diminish me like that, I just can't be in the same mind frame, can't play. And so it leads to me, all right, if we have a declining two-man action between Brunson and Cat, is it possible that we just can't get 100% out of both of those guys? And if that's the case, is that not the duo the Knicks need to go forward with?
So the dirty little secret of the Brunson-Cat partnership, all the questions the night of the Cat trade that we all asked was, can a team with your two best offensive players being not the best defenders ever scale the mountaintop? And the only example we have of something close to that is the team that you cover. And I think, that almost set them up for, like, it's an unfair equivalency because, I'm not saying Jamal Murray's going out and, making all defense anytime soon, but Jamal Murray can be a presence when he needs to be.
He's 6'5", which I think is a big difference.
It's a big, big difference. And the same thing, even if you want to get into the nuances of, like, hey, if you're going to hide Murray on whoever the least threatening wing is in the corner, if that guy's crashing, you're 6'5", you could get a box out. If you're Jalen Brunson trying to prevent, whoever it is, Jordan Walsh on the Celtics from crashing, that's going to be a little bit harder for you. And so, again, we're getting into the weeds here, but I don't even think Brunson and Towns is on the level of Jokic and Murray. But that's, again, the dirty little secret it's not the defense. It's the fact that these guys have yet to make any kind of beautiful music together on offense. Look, there were some really nice numbers in terms of their pick and roll efficiency at the start of their partnership together. It's not like those numbers have gone off a cliff. But, as someone who you podcasted with recently, Zach Lowe, said on his pod, that's not who Brunson is as a point guard, and as a colleague of mine, Benji
Right.
Rithold, says at Knicks Film School here, he wants an offensive lineman more than he does a wide receiver at the center position.
Wow.
And so I
I
don't
love
know.
that. By the way,
it's a
very
great call.
Very
It
descriptive.
is, and it's accurate, and which is why you look at the numbers. The numbers with Brunson on offense, with Brunson and Cat, are not nearly as good this season as the numbers with Brunson and Mitchell Robinson. And it's not all offensive rebounding, I promise you. Mitchell Robinson, he'll screen and rescreen and rescreen.
He's a lineman.
He's a lineman, and you want to talk about the best lineman Jalen Brunson ever had. He unfortunately is winning championships in Oklahoma City right now, which I'll save my rant on the
we both are he's the one that got away for both of us, by the way. The Denver had Hartenstein on the cheapest deal, gave him about 4 games of run and said, nope, it's not our guy. And it killed me because I loved his game.
Well, let me tell you, the Knicks still haven't really gotten over his loss. So that's the Brunson end of it. And then the Towns end of it. Look, I don't know that there is a perfect point guard out there for Karl-Anthony Towns, and it's because he's such a unique player on offense. That said, there are ways to get him going. And I think as a whole, Brunson, the coaching staff, other teammates, I don't know if they've done as good a job of getting him in those situations this year, but players have agency. So it's a little bit of column A, a little bit column B.
I think let's go to some of these other ones.
Sure.
I know that the Knicks world, among the fan base, there is a Hart versus Deuce divide about who should start. And I think part of this comes from the fact that they're two very different versions of the starting lineup. And when you tell me that there's this issue of synergy and how things work out, it makes sense to me. So what is the divide about? What do those two looks give you? And why is it so polarizing?
I think last year, I think it was as simple as once teams started guarding Hart the way they were guarding him.
Yeah.
It coincides, and it's a chicken or an egg question, but he lost his confidence from three completely. And not only were teams not guarding him, he wasn't punishing them. He wasn't even trying to punish them. This year, it's a little bit more nuanced because Hart, actually, I should have checked this, but going into the last few games, he had taken at least 3 3-point attempts in something like 20 consecutive games. He's shooting a nice percentage. Teams are guarding him a little bit more, so it's not that simple. That said, Deuce has become one of the best shooters in the league, which I would not have guessed based on his first couple of years in the league. You want to talk about a rise? His basketball reference page is like it's fan fiction. But it's so much more than that. And for as much as Josh Hart has the reputation of a guy who makes so many winning plays in so many different ways all over the floor, and that's true, Deuce kind of does the same thing in a smaller
he's
package.
A hustle guy. He's just like an extra plays maker.
Yeah. So here's where I come down on it, and this is not the hot take I'm sure you maybe wanted. I don't think there's a wrong answer. Yeah. And I wonder if there is maybe, again, there are some locker room dynamics here. Josh Hart is probably the closest thing. I know Jalen Brunson's the captain. He is the closest thing they have to a true leader on that team. He's always taking accountability. And, Mike Brown said earlier in the year, after he initially did not start Hart, it was his entire coaching staff that came to him and said, listen, you gotta put this guy back in the starting lineup. And I'm not, I'm not saying that's not about basketball, because Josh Hart's an exceptional player.
Yeah.
But I think there may have been a little bit more going on there.
Well, here's the other truth about this. The Knicks come up short last year, and okay, you run it back, but you always bring in some new blood, some new life to say, okay, we're a little different in a meaningful way. Yeah. Well, the new guys are Yabuesele and Clarkson, neither one of which is in the rotation at the moment.
Nope.
So whose fault is it that the reinforcements that were the story of the offseason, here's the new look to the Knicks, are not even part of it? Whose fault is that, in your opinion?
We could go down a long road because the Yabuesele signing occurred before they picked their head coach, because as you may remember, this was not exactly a well thought out plan, the firing of Tom Thibodeau, and it was more about getting someone that was not Tom Thibodeau in that job. So I don't know if Yabuesele is necessarily the best fit for the offense that Mike Brown was envisioning. That was more a front office idea. So, and also, if we're just calling it like it is, Yabuesele has not been able to stay in front of anyone all year. He and I'm not saying he did a great job of that in Philly, but like Mike Brown can't trust him on defense. Clarkson's a little bit more interesting, and I actually think Clarkson, look, his shot's a little bit off this year. The percentages are down from normal, but he has been pretty good when the Knicks need a guy who could just fill in that little gap when Brunson's not on the floor in particular. He gets in the paint. He could still make these kooky shots, from the short mid-range. It's just, I think that is more of an issue of roster building when you have so many guards. Landry Shamet is a guy who I'm not sure how many NBA fans realize how big of a role he has played on the Knicks. He just came back. He was great before he went out with injury. So I think it's just a matter of, if we're already building our team around Brunson and Towns, we can only have so many substandard defenders getting time in addition to them. And I think he's kind of just the odd man out. But look, he's on a minimum, so I don't even mind that. It's the Yabuesele miss that I think is the one that really may come back to bite them. And we'll see what they turn Yabuesele into. What is it, January 22nd? So they have 2 weeks.
That's coming up. It's tough here, man, because all of the things we're talking about, and I think this is the true problem with the Knicks. Like, they have the talent to get it done, or to go deep into the playoffs here, and we have an East that's weak. But everyone has to agree upon the story that you're telling in an organization. Everyone, from the ownership to front office to coach to playing staff to starters to bench, everybody has to kind of agree within certain parameters. There could be slight disagreements, but it does sound like there are different stories being told, and you have to all agree on why you won and why you lost. And all of these things that you're talking about, hiring a player before you brought in a coach. Now the coach comes in, has a different system, has a different idea. This guy plays and this guy starts and all this different stuff. It's just too tough. And so that organization, I feel, was aligned for a brief moment in time, and it felt good, and the Knicks were back, and the alignment has not lasted. The last question then becomes, the trade deadline's a couple weeks away. Mm-hmm. Are you of the opinion that this team has to, in order to salvage this season, or maybe perhaps even for this era, they have to make a move and perhaps even consider making something major? There's been rumors about talks with Memphis and Orlando. There's some big names that could be involved there. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there's this guy Giannis out there who seems to be signaling louder and louder his intentions.
He's thrilled.
Yeah. So do you think this is a thing where the Knicks have to just take some swings right now?
It is such a tough question to answer for two reasons. Number one, if you know better than me, please, I'd love for you to shed light. Who knows what Giannis is or is not going to do, or I guess the more accurate one is what his team is going, because apparently Giannis is the people that work for him. They operate independent of him. And
he can't control what they say.
No, he can't control what they say and where they try to get him traded behind closed doors. So that's number one. And, I do not think the Knicks would do anything to the extent that they even have a realistic chance of acquiring this player. Who knows how much he and his team wants to put their finger on the scale. I don't think that they would do anything to jeopardize their chances of acquiring him. So that's one complication. The other complication is, again, only the people in that locker room truly know how tenuous things are in terms of, all right, are we going to be able to get ourselves on the same page for an extended playoff run? I think to that end, that they were not, it's a dirty little secret again, they were not good in the playoffs last year. Like, if you look at, they were bad against Detroit. That series could have gone either way. And then a lot of their play against Boston was poor. And then we know what happened against Indiana. But they did kind of band together to an extent. So we know they've done it once. I think at the very least, they need to make a small move, turn Yabuesele into something else. I would be surprised, knowing this front office and knowing how they view player valuation. I, at this point, would be very surprised if there was a Towns trade that materialized. Although I will just say the Jaren Jackson Jr. situation in Memphis is something that I am keeping my eye on. He has been not tied to the Knicks, but his father used to coach in the Westchester Knicks. I'm keeping us.
I love the face you gave. So that's something.
Well, and he also is represented by a certain agency that it's 3 letters long. The letters are escaping me at the moment, but I think that agency may have some ties to the Knicks. So I would keep an eye on that. Other than that, though, I don't think, and obviously the Giannis caveat is out there too.
Here's what I'll tell you, man. It's hard to win a championship. You can appear close and not really be. And I think the Knicks, from a distance, you can appear kind of close. But to your point, it's not like they look like juggernauts in the playoffs. They're not playing very well right now. And just because the East is weak, and maybe you could say, hey, we could make a conference finals run. Maybe not. At the moment, I would not pick them. But maybe they could make a conference finals run. You're only halfway there, and that second half is 10 times harder. So to me, I just look at the Knicks and say, I don't believe in it. I don't have faith in it. Especially when you tell me that not everybody is rowing in the same direction. In my experience, those things don't just snap into place because it's go time. So I'm watching the Knicks. I'm seeing what they're doing here, and I'm tuning in to you. Knicks Film School, you can check them out. Jonathan Macri, we appreciate it so much, man. Anything else you want to plug before we get out?
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, if anybody wants to follow one of the more interesting storylines in the league, it's certainly never boring to cover a team that, as you just said, if this team got eliminated in the first round, wouldn't shock me. If they made the finals, it wouldn't shock me. You could tune into all of our stuff over at Knicks Film School, but really appreciate you having me on. This was fun.
Absolutely. Everybody hit that like button on the way out. We'll see you next time.